ones on a quest to live or die. From distant lands we hail, united by our might. Heroes Gaming Group, we're ready for the fight. Through forests and through caves, from cities to the shore, in ashes of creation we search for glory more. With warriors and mages our strength will never wane. Heroes Gaming Group, forever we shall reign. We rise above the ashes, like the phoenix we ascend. Together we are mighty, our mark will never bend. In this strange new land, where heroes make their claim. Heroes Gaming Group, our destiny we tame. Across the riverlands, to the edge of the sand, small adventures on the trade wind, see me answer Vera's call. We'll fight to protect the weak, we defeat every foe. Heroes Gaming Group, no place that we won't go. Empowered by the essence, we look to cleanse the land. History rewritten, the future's in our hand. We'll fight back the corruption, we'll rebuild from the fall. Heroes Gaming Group, together we stand tall. We rise above the ashes, like a phoenix we ascend. Together we are mighty, our mark will never bend. In this strange new land, where heroes make their claim. Heroes Gaming Group, our destiny we tame. Riding through the realm, with swords and shields held high, we are the chosen ones on a quest to live or die. From distant lands we hail, united by our might. Heroes Gaming Group, we're ready for the fight. Through forests and through caves, from cities to the shore, in ashes of creation we search for glory more. With warriors and mages our strength will never wane. Heroes Gaming Group, forever we shall reign. We rise above the ashes, like the phoenix we ascend. Together we are mighty, our mark will never bend. In this strange new land, where heroes make their claim. Heroes Gaming.
Just chug the whole thing, huh?
That could have
Aren't you
been
supposed to be
really
the smart
useful
one?
at some point.
That's what I'm talking about. Let's go!
Good job, guys. TTT.
We don't discriminate. We just hate everyone
We
equally.
get it?
We did.
Yeah, yeah!
For them to come this way, so I shoot them in the back. Shoot them.
All right. Hello, everybody. We finally got the stream up. Great to have you here at our Heroes Hall podcast. Just as an FYI, just want to say right off the bat, we had some technical difficulties. I am working here from Gen Con in Indianapolis, not my normal stream setup. I had to bring everything out here, truck it all out here. So if I lose you again, it's technical difficulties again. And so we're just going to give this one last try. Hopefully no issues, and I didn't jinx it. But really happy to be here. So yeah, this is our Heroes Hall podcast. This is episode 1 here with Heroes Gaming Group. I have a bunch of friendly faces here, a bunch of our officers here at Heroes Gaming Group. We're going to do these about once a month, and we're just going to talk about all things AOC related. So this month, lots of stuff to get into. We have the Alpha 2 release date. As well as the Bard preview that we're going to talk about here. So I think the first thing that I just wanted to talk about is just go through everybody here, introduce themselves. Maybe you guys can do a little plugging of your own stuff if you want to as well. And then we'll get into some conversation if that sounds good. So let's start. Crixus, how about you go first? Just introduce who you are, plug anything you want to plug, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I won't need to plug anything in. Am I muted on the? or am
Oh
coming
no,
through?
I hear you. I hear you, Crixus. You're live right
Oh, you
now.
hear me
The
loud
world
and
can
clear?
hear you. Yeah. Go
Loud
for it.
and clear. Yeah, I don't need to plug anything in, but I'm Crixus. I'm a PvP officer for this hopefully soon Ashes launch that's coming. And yeah, link up with me. I'm playing Once Human right now in the Discord quite a bit with a good group of people. And everybody at Heroes here is a great group. I can't wait to play with y'all.
Awesome. Sounds good, Crixus. Venge, how about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and any plugs that you want to do.
Hi, yes. My name is Jonathan, also known as Venge Warlock, as you can see. I primarily stream or used to stream on Twitch. I'm going to be starting to do that again with Alpha 2 releasing and stuff. But as far as my experience, everything I've been loving it most since I was a really young kid. Played RuneScape all the time, but don't call me a nerd. I know it's a long story. But yeah, so I'm going to be heading up in naval combat for PvP, and that's going to be extra special and awesome because I think the combinations that will be different.
Sweet. And Kai?
Hi, I'm Kai. I'm one of the social officers for Heroes. I'm a serial MMORPGer. I discovered Ashes back when they were doing the crowdfunding campaign in July 2017. You could spot me in the PAX 2017 panel where I asked Steven and team the name of the world, Vera. Otherwise, right now, I am into World of Warcraft a lot. I play on NA, Area 52, Horde, and I like to do mythic grading, getting into some PvP, and I might start streaming some mythic grade for the next tier coming out. Who knows?
Awesome. And last but not least, Scary Dave.
Hey guys, I'm Scary Dave. I'm going to be one of the PvE officers here at Heroes Gaming Group and mainly specializing on the raiding side of things. I've been playing World of Warcraft far too many hours over the last 20 years. I'm currently raiding in 2 separate guilds on 2 separate servers, and I'm also a guild master on Classic. 2 out of 3 of those are top 500 mythic guilds. I'm looking forward to getting into the raids and going harsher on some of the more fine-tuning of balance and trying to make sure everything works well.
Awesome. So that's our
and you
crew
can catch
here.
my YouTube and my Twitch, which are here.
Yeah, can't forget those plugs. Definitely go check those out.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, so great. Let's just get into some conversation. This was like a huge live stream, everybody. So we were supposed to get our Alpha 2 actual date of launch. I was on the convention floor here at Gen Con listening into my phone, had it right up against my ear, trying to wait for that date, September 15th, September 30th. And all of a sudden I heard October, right? And I was like, no, I can't believe it. And I saw like similar, reactions as well, from the rest of the Discord community and in the streams. Obviously delayed a month here from Q3 to Q4. At least it's at the beginning of Q4. And on the bright side, we at least have a month, right? We have a month. But yeah, I kind of wanted to get your guys' initial reactions to that. I know it took me by surprise, but how about the rest of you? What do you think about the reveal for October? You happy, not happy, maybe somewhere in the middle?
Kind of disappointed that it wasn't my birthday, September 28th, but I was pretty close.
Almost. Almost. Yeah, what'd you think, Scary Dave, about the October? I saw you giving like the thumbs down there.
Yeah, I'm not happy at all.
Yeah,
I think that
talk through it.
I think that the window that we've been given now is another opportunity for them to delay it again. I was pretty confident, and they made it pretty heavy hints to the fact that we were getting a release date. The fact we still don't have one is bad news for me. I don't like it at all. Pissed.
Yeah, definitely. Kai, how about you?
All right, look, I'm gonna be the minority here. I love an October release. All right. War Within WoW's coming out end of August. The raids are coming out mid-September. I got a lot of prep to do for that. This gives me time to get that out of the way and do that. And I think that's part of the reason, a little part of the reason why they delayed. And I think it's smart. Helps to have a better launch, right? Why would you want to go compete with something like WoW or any other game, really? So I'm for it.
Yeah, definitely Venge.
Well, I was expecting Scary Dave to like an October release because Halloween month, but honestly, I'm not too upset with it. I think it's kind of a cool. At least we have something, planted, and it's not something we can. We're gonna be like, oh, when's they gonna do it? They're gonna finally release it. It's October is a good solid one. I think in August, I think it was 16th. Steven's going to be more specific on the time frame anyway, so that'd be kind of cool to see.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in a couple of weeks, we're going to get a lot more detail here about Alpha 2. We're going to get that roadmap going, talking about specifically our future forward plan, talking about those Alpha 2 keys, opening back up as well. But yeah, I don't know. My initial reaction was, I'm going to be honest, I was a little disappointed originally just because I think Steven really the last year, 2 years has really put an emphasis on I'm not going to say anything unless I'm 100% sure. And it's kind of drilled that point home into our heads. And then last year, a year ago, we get a Q3 date, right? And so we're thinking, hey, he said he's not going to say anything unless he's 100% sure. We got our Q3 date. It's set in stone, right? Nothing can go wrong because he wouldn't have told us if he wasn't 100% sure. And then, something like this happens. And I think in a lot of people's minds, they think through that and they go, well, how can I trust it's going to be in October? Right? You tell us Q3, you're confident on that, right? 100% for a year. And then, you tell us October. How do I know that's not going to get pushed back to November, December? So I thought that was a little bit of a bummer personally, but I think they made up with it with the Bard preview for sure. I saw there was a lot of hype there, and at the end of the day, right? If you've been following this game for ever, 7 years or so that we've been following this game, I think that. I think I lost a couple people there on screen. Yeah. So let's take a quick break there, and we'll be right back as soon as I can figure out that camera situation, whatever happened there, and I'll be right back.
Riding through the realm, with swords and shields held high, we are the chosen ones on a quest to live or die. From distant lands we hail, united by our might. Heroes Gaming Group, we're ready for the fight. Through forests and through caves, from cities to the shore, in ashes of creation we search for glory more. With warriors and mages, our strength will never wane. Heroes Gaming Group, forever we shall reign. We rise above the ashes, like phoenix we ascend. Together we are mighty, our bond will never bend. In this strange new land, where heroes make their claim. Heroes Gaming Group, our destiny we tame. Across the riverlands, to the edge of the sands wall, adventures on the trade with see me answer Vera's call.
You just chugged the whole thing, huh? Right. I think we're starting to get people back here, though you're all in the wrong spots. Love
I'm
it.
Kai now.
Oh, no.
This is fantastic. You are Kai. So we got to put you back, Crixus, into your spot, right? But I think that's where you should be. I think.
Hey, I'm Scary Dave.
Right.
You
There
wish.
you go. You wish.
I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. Okay.
All right. I think we got everybody back into the right spots here.
I was a PvP officer for a second.
You were.
Unreal.
Oh, you're
Not a
On your
good
CV
idea.
now, yeah.
Not a good idea.
Let's see. 1, 2, and I gotta put you here, Venge. There we go. All right.
Thank you.
I think that's good. Sounds good. All right. Where were we? What were we talking about? We were talking about the Bard preview here, I think, is what we were talking about.
The game release date.
And the game release
the
date,
alpha
yeah.
too.
So, I think they made up with it with the Bard preview, right? Like, we had a lot of really good reactions here in the Discord and on the Twitch stream. I saw, right, as Drake commenting in chat that I'm pushing buttons and breaking stuff. That's true. I like to do that a lot. But yeah, how about we just talk about like initial thoughts about the Bard? We'll just go like around the table. Scary, tell me what you think about the stream, just overall as far as the Bard's concerned.
Basically, from what I saw, I feel like they're going to be relatively game breaking. I think that the amount of support things they bring is going to mean that if they're not brought, then bosses are going to feel overly difficult, and if they are brought, then they're going to feel overly easy. So depending on how they tune the bosses, I think that having this kind of support play in the game really does lead itself in to be better or not. It's never going to be in the middle. It's never going to be an okay thing. It's only ever going to be an absolute god tier spec, or it's going to be so dog shit it's not worth bringing to any group. So that worries me, having seen this with World of Warcraft.
Yeah, for sure. I think like looking at these Bard abilities, they're either going to be like really powerful, right? These bards, depending on how they're tuned, or I think the exact opposite can happen where if they're not tuned correctly, they just become like another thought in the wind, really. Where they're that jack of all trades but master of none, so you end up finely tuning and optimizing from a min-max perspective. You want very specific healers and DPS and tanks, and you just forget about that because you can always put another healer into the group or another DPS into the group, specifically for what you're looking for, if they're not tuned correctly. But if tuned correctly, the Bard, I think, is going to be a heavy hitter for group content specifically. But even more so, I was really excited about I think how the Bard is going to impact the PvP scene. Personally, I know Scary, you're like all over the raiding scene, but personally, like I consider myself more of a PvP player at heart. And I know Venge and Crixus, you guys are PvP here too, so I'm curious about your thoughts. But I thought that the CC toolkit that the Bard had there in the live stream was really interesting, and I can see how that can come into play on the PvP side of things and be pretty strong in a party. Say you have just a couple bards maybe just rolling around with like your heavy hitting melee fighters. They roll right into that scene and they hit them with those staggers, right away, and then you just nuke them. Venge, Crixus, what are your thoughts?
You can go first, Crixus.
Yeah, I think it's gonna really come down. Like initial thoughts on the Bard for me were like that's gonna be a pretty high skill ceiling class to play, and that a lot of people are going to get there's going to be a few amount of people that are going to get very good at it and make the Bard seem OP, and then there's going to be a lot of people that play the Bard. They're there as like you said, like a jack of all trades, but they're not proficient at it, and that's going to make it seem weak among the masses per se. But then you have a couple of Bards that come at you with a party and they just absolutely run you over, and you're like, what the heck happened? Because they're just really good at using the kit. Yeah, I think that's going to be a big thing with this kit, is getting really good and proficient at pulling off the combos and having that cohesiveness, like that communication with your group is going to be massive.
Yeah, definitely.
I think from the naval perspective, since I only know how to fight on boats, apparently, it's going to be really cool to have a Bard in that situation because he's going to be very protected from a PvP standpoint, especially from a long distance. So the melee people will not be able to rush in and all that, but Rangers and everything, so the shield bubbles from the tanks and the reflecting walls, those are going to be enormous and huge for that.
Yeah, for sure. Especially those shields. It's interesting you brought that up. I like immediately, what was it, like 400% scaling based on your max magicka or something like that? That seems like it could be like they were only level 10 there, and I think it was taking up like 15% of their health bar, the actual shield itself, at level 10.
That will change the definition of what can and can't one-shot you, which means some mechanics that were meant to kill you in one shot will become trivial. That's what worries me.
Yeah.
That's those kind of things that terrify me.
Right. Like, you think that, right, you're always going to run into the min-maxers, right, in any game. I would consider myself probably a min-maxer at heart, too. But you're going to be looking at ways to abuse that, especially when you hit level 50. You're not level 10, and you're just pumping out that max magicka, and all of a sudden your shields are like 100% of your health, because of the scaling. So you're effectively doubling your health pool with those shields. And, like in ESO, for instance, right? I come from ESO for like 10 years, that's like an ultimate ability in ESO, right? We have a like barrier, right, that you can pop in ESO, and it's on a timer, and, bam, you get this large shield for all of your health pool that can save the day. But the bards have it in like a stance, that you can just weave in and out of. Yeah, I'll be interested to see how they balance that. Obviously, balancing is going to come at a much later stage here. Not really till the betas, but the toolkit definitely seems like it'd be pretty powerful. Kai, what about your thoughts?
I think I have a mixture of thoughts from what everyone said, especially because, and some of us guildies were talking about it, like World of Warcraft has newly added a support type of class spec. Dave here plays it, Augmentation Evoker. And it is that it's either like I have found you're really good at it or you're really bad at it. So you're either bringing the party down or you're like 100% mandatory needed in order to do the best possible content and push the best times and min-max the best. I am curious about, and I don't know how much small scale PvP there will be in Ashes, but I'm curious how they would fit into that. Like maybe like a 2s, 3s type of group, like out in the world going and PvPing on one in a smaller group. I'm curious how they would go. But I think, and it feels like a tall order, and I think that's why like games have a hard time putting in like support specific classes to try to balance this to where you aren't going to make the other classes just not like viable, but then also not making this bard support like so weak that it's like, why would I want that? So I'm curious to see what they do. I hope it doesn't end up a situation where bards become like the must go to and other classes just get kicked out because of that. And I'm curious to see how they do. I think they said towards the end, diminishing returns, about how you can't have multiple bards. And it didn't seem like they had that fully fleshed out yet. So I'm curious how that's going to work when you have multiple. Because I know in WoW, at first when all it came out, players will find a way to abuse it, and so they have
It's not
definitely
even when it
abused.
first came out. For over 9, 10
I mean,
months
yeah.
now, we've been taking the ideal mythic comp for the hardest bosses requires 4 augmentation evokers. That's how broken they are. And you only have 20 slots in those
Yeah.
groups. And
Yeah.
it's to a point where you sometimes cannot kill an end boss of a mythic expansion without having at least 3 of them in a group. So that kind of ruins it for anyone that's not playing Org. And even
So-
actually forces good players to play Org even if they don't want to, because 3 out of your 20 team must be playing that class.
So out of those augments, Dave, if you had someone who could play it, but they were like mid or not even good at it, would you even consider bringing one of them as one of the 3 or the
honest,
4?
With
Or
Org
is it that
especially,
difficult?
it's actually more about how much preparation you're willing to put into during and before the raid. So we actually have Warcraft logs, obviously. We can rank all the damage in and out on Warcraft. So what I do is I take our raid logs from the previous fight, import that into an add-on, a third-party website, that will tell me who the best people are to buff for every 30-second window. So for every 30 seconds, I know I'm buffing these 4 people, these 4 people, these 4 people, these 4 people. And if I do that and stick to the right thing, that'll be absolutely fine. Because then that'll line up with all of these people doing their optimum amount of damage and everyone's getting the most from me. Whereas someone who just says, hey, I'm going to go into a raid, they step in, they're not going to have access to those logs, they're not going to want to do that between every pull, and they're not going to have the preparation to be able to import that into the game and then put it into the WeChorus. So it's not even necessarily about playing, because Augment isn't a particularly hard spec to play. But you need to have a very deep understanding of how the game works and a good understanding of when your teammates are doing their most amount of damage. And if it's not utilized to that level of min-maxing, it's thrown. Because you're buffing the wrong people when they're not needing the damage.
Yeah, 100%. Well, flipping it back over to the bard then, in the chat, I noticed someone said something. What did it say? Let's see here. Where is it?
Yeah, I wanted to just point out too, like Kai, I think your point too of seeing how like the bard performs in smaller scale groups too, because I think everybody's excited about how the bard is going to perform in large scale groups. Everybody's thinking about, how you can maximize your DPS, how you're debuffing your enemies, how you're accenting the healer, for the group, right, heals. But I think there's something to be said about how it plays, not even just in small scale combat, but even solo, right? Because there will be points in Ashes, though it is a group focused game, where you're out, you're adventuring solo, you're going through the storyline, and there will be parts that you might need to grind solo within the game. And so, will people want to play the Bard solo to get through those aspects of the game to eventually get to that high end group play? So, I think that's like an interesting part too, because I think a lot of people go into support. Like, if you think about other games, right immediately to head in my head, I think like League of Legends and I think of support, right? I know it's totally like a MOBA, it's not an MMO, but you jump into a support role in like League of Legends, you're immediately right in the mix, in the fray, supporting your AD carry, right? You're able to get involved right away and do your role. But in an MMO, from a support aspect, there's a grind aspect to it where you kind of have to do the work first to eventually get into that role. But if that work is a slog, like people will just quit, right? They're going to go like, I'm not having fun with this. You know, I'm going to go play that hard hitting warrior that I can just go zug zug, right? And run into the fray and just hit things
There are
real
ways of
hard.
mitigating this, though. I mean, I can say from World of Warcraft perspective, we have different specs. So I always switch to the DPS spec for any kind of world content or solo content. But in Ashes, if you're picking the Bard as your main spec, you're not going to have that option. So I think that the only way they can really deal with that is that they have two separate builds, one which buffs your enemies, your allies, and debuffs your enemies, and another one which just focuses on primary play. It will never match up to what DPS could do. So that will feel bad compared to playing a conventional class, which is made to do mass AoE pools, stuff like that. I can imagine they can make it bearable, or at the very least, they can get you up to a point at the early levels, and then the scaling starts slowing down a little bit, and your buffs get stronger. There are ways around it. It's just never going to feel optimum though.
And depending on the mastery tree system and how they edit that and finish that up, they might be able to spec into different things and have multiple bars with different masteries and specialization stuff too.
For example, single target damage or AoE damage for world content might be replaced with self heals and ongoing throughput rather than having to sit and do supporting buffs where you can just focus on the damage.
Yeah, definitely. I think, kind of speaking on like the skill tree a little bit, since you brought it up, Venge, they did mention they made those changes to the skill tree, I think, during this live stream. So instead of it having like more direct paths, now they have like stages and tiers, right? So you have so many skill points that you put into tier 1 and that unlocks your tier 2 skills, and then so many points into tier 2 and you unlock your tier 3 skills, so that you can kind of mix and match between tiers those skills, so it doesn't necessarily have to be like one straightforward path, right, along the skill path tree. Like, again, I always go back to ESO, but we have like our champion point system. So you reach max level in ESO, and then all of a sudden the champion point tree opens up to you, and you can get up to 3,600 champion points, right, that you can allocate into the tree. But you start on like one dot of the tree, and if you go in one path, if you want like the ultimate ability on one side of the tree, you have to hit like the 10 steps along the way, but you totally lose out on the left side of the tree, right? So maybe you spec into shields, but you miss out on what you could be doing health-wise or dodge roll-wise or, max stamina or DPS. So there are choices that you have to make. Whereas, I don't know how I feel about maybe a system that doesn't have that, because I feel you inherently then take away kind of that give and take that you have with a normal tree, right? Like if you can just choose any tier 1, any tier 2, any tier 3, just based on how many points are invested in each tier, you just unlock the next tier and then I can mix and match whatever I want. Like the min-maxers, there will be an optimal like type of skills, right, that you will select, right?
Yeah,
You're going to go in
scenario.
and there is going to be like a perfect set of skills that you will be using for PvE every time in those raids, because they're just the best, right? You're using your crit chance on tier 1, you're using your pen, on tier 2, whatever it might be, right? Or your damage reduction on tier 3.
I'd say depending on the boss, because obviously you have cleave, single target pure, and then there might be one with loads of ads. Then there's three different
right.
opportunities
You
to
might
build,
have
I see that,
different
yeah.
like specs, based on the raid or the boss or whatever it might be. And you can say the same for PvP too. Maybe PvP might be a little bit more fluid, but I can definitely see on the PvE side of things, at least in a system like that, you actually inherently create less diversity of builds, because you're just making it easier to min-max and create that ultimate class. Whereas if you had more of a skill tree, you have to, there are checks and balances, right? There's give and take on, if I want to go damage, right, I'm losing my mitigation, right? And so do I go half damage, half mitigation? Do I go all damage? You know, more glass cannon build. I think it makes you think a little
mean,
bit more.
From a raid leader's perspective, like, you're going to be playing whatever I tell you to play, and that's going to be it. And that is the way it works. Because if your guild leadership is saying, "Well, we're playing for a boss," they're going to be picked you for that comp, knowing you're playing a certain build that they have in their mind. So it's as much as it's going to be like, "Oh, it's great, you've got all these choices," you're not really going to have that choice in a realistic sense. You're going to be told, "Oh, we need you to buff healers for phase 3, and that's why you're in this fight."
Yeah, and I guess I'm talking more of like maybe from a meta standpoint as far as deciding what that meta is. I think it blurs the lines on what that meta is a little bit when you have that give and take system, because there are, I think, more viable options. Whereas if you have that tier list, like there's going to be a clear like one option really that you should be going for whatever raid or boss or situation you're in.
Well, and with like Guild Wars 2, they have a similar system where you give and take and stuff with different parts of your build and stuff. And I really enjoy that because it gives the opportunity for experimentation. And so the opportunity to do that in Ash Creation, I think, would allow more player base to have more fun with it.
Yeah, that's true too.
As much as I talk about the min-max and the multiple builds for raid bosses and stuff, every game that I've ever played is built on its casual player base. So as much as we're going to completely do what we can to min-max, regardless of how much fun that takes away from the game, that base fun does need to be there for the casuals. And no better person in the world is going to say that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, 100%.
No, absolutely. I definitely think that's a point. And you've brought that up several times too, Kai. I've heard you talk about that too, like the importance of the casual player base, right? And I don't think that they're talked about enough. And I've brought that up during, I think, a couple live streams, like when we go into the Discord and we have the big live stream chats, is, you know, I just really hope that Intrepid keeps that in mind, especially when they were talking about, not to get a little off topic, the Caravan PvP. You know, I had like a lot in my mind about, hey, you know, how is the casual player base interacting with Caravan PvP, for instance? Because it's, you know, it seems like it's more of a guild focused activity, honestly. And
Not
guilds
gonna
are
lie,
just going to dominate it.
Even from my perspective as someone that focuses on PvE, I looked at that, I was like, yeah, that looks cool, but I probably won't be interacting with it.
Right.
Not if I can help it.
Yeah, like if I'm just a random person, you know, running throughout the world and I see Caravan PvP going on, what's my incentive to join in besides just to PvP? And if you're not a PvPer, really, you have no incentive, to be honest, in my opinion. But kind of, I'm digressing a little off the Bard preview, but, you know, I think it's really important that we keep that casual player base in mind, because they make up a vast majority kind of your gamer base, and you can't just cater to these big guilds, you know, or whatever your gameplay. You really need that solid core casual foundation. What are your thoughts, Kai?
Yeah, so you have a great memory. Yeah, I was bringing that up a lot around the Caravan stuff, because I know, like, even for WoW, the majority, like the vast majority of players are casual, and I want AOC to be successful. So I want to make sure that this game isn't punishing towards that. And my big concern is when you go into the office hours later on and a lot of the feedback, it's almost like I'm afraid we get kind of stuck in a vacuum, because a lot of the people who have stuck with AOC and kept with it, they kind of lean more towards, like, a lot of us, a little bit more min-maxy, a little bit more try-hard, really invested. And there's not a lot of the casual player base being represented in there. And so I hope we're not getting, like, sucked into this vacuum, and that they're thinking about that, because it's already, Ash is already, I'm so excited for a game that's going to respect PvP like this, and they're trying all of that. But a lot of people don't like open world PvP and a lot of things like that, a lot of casuals. So I just, same with the Bard, I hope it's not too complex of a class to where it's really hard for people to perform well, and then it's harder for them to, like, pug into groups and everything. So I do hope that they are considering, like, the casual player, even though I know even us a lot of the time we'll sit here and we'll talk about the min-maxy type of stuff, because that's where we sit. So yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, even like when you look at, you know, like one of the things that comes up for me is something like New World, right? And you know, not to rag on anybody who still loves New World, but, you know, I consider New World a disaster. You know, and really I think a lot of the problem in New World is that the casual player base there was no reason for them to play the game. New World was kind of hyped up as, all these wars and the territories that they have, and you're going to have these territories kind of flipping factions and zones, and everybody's going to be involved in that war like all the time. But the reality is, the way that they had it set up, it really only catered to big guilds who could get in right away on a territory, and then they had a monopoly on the war roster on that territory. So if you were a casual person and you're just leveling up, you're having fun with the crafting, you get to max level, these guilds have already established themselves with the territories. They are bringing the same 50 people to every war that they bring, and that casual player isn't getting in. And really, New World suffered from a lot of other problems as well. But, the fact that they didn't have other content, like a lot of these casual players were like, there's nothing for me, right? The big attraction is getting into these wars and the PvP. And if I can't do that, then what's the point?
A big portion of that relies on those guilds as well, though. I mean, we're going to be a sizable community going into this. And I think that if we're going to go in and take large chunks of the map and people are playing on our server, it's part of our responsibility to ensure these players aren't having their time ruined as well. And WoW is very guilty for that. The top end players look down on the casuals a lot, even though they know that they've got to be there, right? So as much as these things happen, it's going to be our responsibility and our guild's responsibility to look out for these new people and pull them into the mesh rather than push them out of it. It's not inaccessible; they're just not starting at the top.
And like I joke about, the Hitman squad that I was playing to make all the time, but I think it will be helpful for casual players to rely on our guild to be like, hey, dude, this guy is just destroying every possibility we have for anything. And it's like, cool, I'll kill him.
I almost think of the Hitman squad as being like, for me, the open world PvP is I like open world PvP because there's always that you do not know what's going to happen factor when you go out and do things solo.
Yep.
You could be run up on by a group and destroyed, or you could be run up on a group, and then there's another group that comes in, and then they get into a little battle or a tussle because they just saved your life or whatever, or trying to make friends with you and whatnot. That's happened to me plenty of times, and it opens up the door for a lot more unknowns. Like you think you know what you're going to do. I'm going to go do this side quest over here, do some of this content, and then this caravan comes by and there's a giant war happening with a bunch of players, and you're like, holy crap, what's going on here? Like it has that capability to like be a little bit more random, I would say, out in the open world with like interacting with players. And not everybody's always just going to kill you every time they see you in an open world PvP game. It adds a little bit more to the interactions, I would say.
Yeah, and it reminds me of like RuneScape old days in the wilderness where you're just like roaming around trying to do your thing, and then all of a sudden 10 people come out, freeze you. You're like, well, I guess I'm just dead. So
Yeah, you're like, I was just out here trying to do a clear scroll, man. What's going on?
I'm just trying to be just chilling over here, but all of a sudden I'm dead, I guess.
Yeah, well, like even for me, like when I go out and we're talking about mid-maxing and all that stuff, like I plan on being fairly strong as a solo player too, especially when it comes to PvP and being out in the open world. Like if I see someone who's mining, for instance, and they're on a mining run or something like that, and they're getting ganked, like I will join in there. Or maybe someone's trying to take their spot, like
You
someone's
heard it here
bullying
first.
them or
Crix
something
is
like that.
1v10. He will take on all 10 of your bullies.
Yeah.
I'll sit there and watch it.
And then
I'll sit there watching
I'll
the game.
just head in there and I'll be like, yo, like this is my time to shine. I see something happening, I'm gonna jump right in. I'm not even gonna think twice,
Don't-
right? So
Don't worry, Crixus. If you lose, I'll have artillery ready to kill them anyway.
yeah, 100%. And then same thing with the caravan warfare. Like the caravan PvP, I think should be considered small scale. Even though it can be pretty big groups, I still think it's going to be considered the small scale PvP of Ashes. So it'd be good to like bring small groups of 8 to 12 and go do caravan raids, or vice versa, 8 to 12 people defending a caravan, right? I don't think it's going to be massive. Like
you catch someone.
Yeah, I think
Considering
it's
the
going to
size
be
of
quite
the
rare
world.
too. Yeah, 100%, right? It's going to be pretty rare too, right? But again, it's another risk reward thing, like a system that's in the game. And as for like raids and PvE and stuff like that, like the risk there is just failing the raid. Whereas in PvP, it's losing your stuff. Like
Lose your
it's,
livelihood, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not a very
And,
casual friendly system. If they make it so that someone can loot your gear when they kill you, then there's an incentive inherently built into ganking new players in the open world.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I don't know if they've touched on whether or not it's going to be a full
Yeah,
loot system.
they've talked on like how loot is going to work, and I was actually going to talk about that too, bring that up because Brune mentioned in chat there, that for him it'll depend on like how well the anti-griefing systems work in game, because he doesn't mind the open world PvP. It's really when people are griefing, and that's kind of where corruption comes in, right? And that will impact right how much loot you drop, right? Whether you're a non-combatant, whether you're a combatant, or whether you're corrupted. And kind of like to your point, Scary Dave, it's going to be on, I think, big guilds as well to help out with that, right? Like, there's only so much you can build into a game. And, like, as a big guild, right, we have to keep that in mind that, like, we need to protect the little guy, too, right? It's not all just about, like, hey, we're looking to do obviously like right our world our server and world first raids. We want to capture a guild castle. We have a team that's going to be dedicated to doing that at the start of Alpha 2 and then at the start of launch right away to rush that, our guild castle rush team. Like we want to have those really small scale hardcore elite groups going within our guilds. But we need to make sure that as big guilds, we're keeping in mind that a vast majority of people are casual, and we need to help them out, right? There has to be giving back to that kind of community, because otherwise, if you don't have a community to play with because they've all left, then like there's really no game for you to play. So
also, I know I kind of say this from a place of privilege, but I remember back in the early days of World of Warcraft, when someone that had completed a raid or they'd become a max gladiator in PvP walked through the city, everyone stopped and turned and was like, wow, look at that guy. That guy fucking is the man, And you don't get that anymore. So as much as it's great being a really elite guy rolling around with your epic sword, there's no fucking point if everyone's got that epic sword, right? You have to
Yeah.
you have to have something to stand out from, and without casuals, there's no point in having that.
And bringing it
Yeah.
back to the Bard too, right? Because I know we got on that like, that offshoot there, but bringing it back to the Bard, the Bard can be that character, right? That goes out and helps the casual player, right? They're the ultimate support class. They're the buffing class, right? Like I could totally just see like Bards going out there in the world, and maybe that's the type of solo gameplay that attracts a support player, right? Maybe they're out in the world, they're looking for players that are struggling for whatever reason. They're like, I'm gonna tag along with this individual. I'm gonna start, helping his mana regen, his health regen. I'm just gonna start healing him and doing some funny dances around him and maybe a little role playing or whatever, to help him out. And then I'm gaining experience, right, as I kind of adventure along with him. Maybe that's kind of what people hold on to as someone who's not necessarily full-fledged support. I'm a tank, so obviously I play in a support role somewhat, but I'm not like full support like the Bard would be. I could totally see a Bard running around the world and kind of that being their primary motivation, right, and how they level. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how that operates. But how about like focusing back on the skills that were shown during the live stream? What would you say is like your favorite skill from the Bard that they showed? Like, what did they show that you were like, wow, that's amazing. I can't wait to utilize that in game or to break it or to see it operate. Like, what skill from the Bard, like, were you like, whoa?
All of
Definitely
them,
when
great
you...
mechanic with. All of them.
Yeah.
Like mainly the movement speed and the max health increase. For me, that means I can absolutely cheese a raid boss.
Yeah, I like
definitely,
the... Go ahead, you go, Benj.
Sorry. I definitely really enjoyed the damage increase and the healing buffs too, because that'll help. I mean, especially in PvP, you debuff the enemies so that they take more damage, and oh man, this can be crazy. If you time it right, you're just gonna nuke everybody.
I had this thing where like I didn't see like a big sword and melee swing, so like I didn't necessarily process any of those abilities. But what was really cool was the cosmetic the Bard had on. That was dope. So I did see that, but then again I saw like this floating book and I was like, that's not a sword. So I was like, eh. It looked really derpy when it was like moving around and stuff. It looked really derpy, and I was like, "Oh, I would definitely kill that on the battlefield." All right,
This sounds
so
grand, I swear.
yeah.
I can't wait to kill one of them and take his hat.
I'm gonna
you know, Kai,
slash your book in half.
I love how you just switched from like, wow, that was an awesome outfit to like, I want to chop his head off, you know?
It looked really derpy, all right? Like unique, right? But really derpy. It's just primo target for me to go leap in and start spinning on them, honestly.
I like the
Being
Dragon
honest.
Breath Fire AoE, like the ultimate. That was sick. How you build up the stories, and you can do like 3 different versions or 4 different versions of it by building up the story combo. That's the ult was pretty sick. The fire.
Yeah, I was
Not
gonna
pretty big
say,
AO.
from Evoker. But...
I
That
was
was
gonna
a
say the
pretty
ult
big
for
AoE.
sure was one thing that I was excited about. I'd say the 2 abilities that excite me most from a PvP perspective are probably the movement speed and the shield. I think in general are 2 things that will be a lot of fun in PvP. You know, I just think back to like ESO and like looking at ball groups and how they run around Cyrodiil, right? And so I could just imagine like a tightly knit group with a bunch of healers running around PvPing, right? Everybody decently close together, spamming heals, throwing up that movement buff from the Bard so that they can move really fast, right? Big AoEs, dropping those on groups, at the same time shielding up from the Bard, right, for the counterattack, and then running right past them, right? Looping around to lock, like a big rock or a tree, healing up, and then coming back in for like a second run, right? And so you're just seeing people like dashing across the battlefield, drop AoE, heal, movement, go, come back, right? So I can see like a lot of that gameplay.
Sinker Cookie will be our buff boy.
Right, I
He's
know
our gathering
Cookie's in
boy.
chat there, but Cookie was super excited there about the Bard. Got a little bit of vindication talking about the Bard in the Discord, for like the last year or so.
As a bloodthirsty PvPer, I love the fact that the Dance of Malice has him like teabagging almost. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
How about any abilities that you didn't like? Is there anything like that we saw from the Bard that you'd say, not too keen on that, or
Yeah,
maybe they could
both
do
those same
something else?
abilities that I saw that I could break bosses with, I also hate them because they can break bosses, and that means they're going to be compulsory. So the movement speed and the max health.
For PvP small scale, I would say that that siphon ability would be pretty annoying to deal with too if you didn't kill the Bard first. You'd always have to worry about getting like the tank low or anyone low really that's in the Bard group, and then the Bard all of a sudden just sacrifices some health. He's out of the fight a little bit, and then just boom, whoever you were targeting initially is just back to full health almost. That'd be really annoying to deal with.
Yeah, I was gonna say the siphoning ability, that like lifesteal ability, because while it sounds a lot of fun on the surface, that just is one of those abilities that I could see being like very broken, or even replacing somewhat what a cleric brings to a party, right? I mean, when I first read that, it was when I was just like reading the tooltip on screen. I misread it. I thought it said, you have a random chance of taking back 50% of whatever damage you deal, and that you'll do that like 2% of the time. And I was like, oh, so like on average, mathematically speaking, right, on average, you're going to be taking back 1% lifesteal essentially. But then when I reread the tooltip, they mentioned it again. It was like 25%. So you're giving people like permanently 12.5% lifesteal in your party. That's like a big deal, I think.
I think this will come through to numbers tuning though, as much as what we're seeing right now is it's still in beta. Also, it's not tuned at all. So it's basically concept, right? They could put that down to 1% to 5%. We don't know yet. The game's still in A2, right? So
Right,
what I'm
yeah.
looking at with these things mainly is about how they play, not how much damage each ability does.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a good point, right? Yeah, obviously, when we get to the betas, that's when we're going to be worried about balancing. But I could just see that ability has the potential, especially when you see similar abilities like that in other games, to be very broken and could be hard to balance, I could see. So I think kind of sticking more to the way those dances work with, buffing healing received, buffing mana regen, or whether it be stamina, health, whatever that might be. Sticking to those type of abilities with the bard mainly is kind of the better way to go. But you want to be careful not to replace what the cleric is either. So I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. We're at 7:48 here. Just checking the time. How about lack thereof news of the character creator? I think that was something that I really wanted to see from this live stream in general, and they didn't mention it at all. I don't know if they mentioned it in the Q&A a little bit later because I had to drop off a little earlier. I don't think they did. But when would you guys optimally want to see the character creator? Like, when do you think they should release that? If they have a release date in October, let's just say, for the sake of argument, they release this in end of October. When should they release the character creator to us?
September.
September. So you think like maybe a month early to dig into the character creator?
Yeah, maybe a month early.
Is
I
the
think
goal?
literally already. They should have already had it out a week or so
Yeah, I
ago.
was gonna say like yesterday. If you want me to be able to play on release music, like I needed it yesterday. You know, I
you
need all
needed
that
time to do those
Yeah.
tattoos and the hairdos, right?
I need to be able to consider like how the model's gonna look with the big armor and the big swords and everything. It's like at this rate, I'm not gonna be able to play on launch anyway. So
Yeah,
Also, it's the best bit of free marketing they could ever ask for, and if they're delaying people like this, give us something else.
Right. That would be my point, right? You know, I would say today, right? We should have that character creator, or
Maybe that's something that it's coming up in August. Like
right. So we'll see in a couple weeks here, August 16th, when we do the AMA. Like, I'd love for that AMA to be like, here's all the stuff we have, and bam, character creator is live. You know, for all you non-Alpha 1 folks, right? Alpha 2 folks, you know, sorry, we had to delay it another month, but here's a character creator to kind of keep you happy for a little bit, right? So you don't have to wait another month, you know, to get into Alpha 2. I think that would like go a long way, I think, with just saying, all right, here you go, you know, take it and run with it. Because I think the character creator is like done pretty much, right? From what I understand. So I don't think they really have like any work to do on that for the most part. So it just seems like maybe the right thing to do for me. But
I'd like to answer Cookie in chat saying if they really want people to test the character creator, I think 1 to 2 weeks before would be my bet. I don't see any drawback from releasing the character creator as soon as it's ready because it's just free marketing. The more people that get to try it, the more people have got a vision of what they will be in this world that isn't out yet.
Yeah.
I think it would be fair to see that coming after the around the August 16th A2 preview, because I definitely think that being focused on the Alpha 2 release specifically is going to be a huge thing for Steven to be like, hey, by the way, here's a gift. But
I feel like releasing the character creator ahead of time is a relatively new concept for MMOs, though. Like, I think I can recall maybe 1 or 2, maybe in more recent years, allowing it. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they just didn't release it sooner. I mean, it's not like it's like standard practice. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just never released it early until like release.
True. They did tell us
Yeah.
though that they were going to release the character creator.
Yeah, they did
before
tell
Alpha
us
2.
quarter 3.
Right. But that's what I'm saying, right? It would go a long way, I think, of like kind of helping
Yeah.
keep the community's mind like focused on something else.
I'll be honest, I would have preferred them to tell me it was the last day in October than just give me an October vague date. That tells me they don't know, and that worries me more than actually being told it's the end of October.
That's why I'm just pretty hopeful it's going to be the 31st of October. We'll all just dress up and play Ashes of Creation.
There you go,
Crossfire
right in our
wants to
Halloween
step up
costumes.
baddies.
Sure, right on Halloween.
The how about Alpha 2 access? I know all of us here, we have Alpha 2 access, and we have a bunch of people in the community in our guild that have Alpha 2 access. But for those that don't have Alpha 2 access, what do you guys think the price and these packages should look like? Like, optimally, what would they say in a couple weeks as far as how they're going to release those keys again? Because we know they're going to give them back out, right, for sale, but we don't know like what form that's going to take.
I think if they're going to do just the Alpha 2 release key for just Alpha 2, it should probably be $50 maximum for that kind of thing. If they're going to do like the whole thing, beta 1 and 2 as well, up to the release, I think it's fair to do like the $100, $200 range maybe. But I think 50 would be like the max I would recommend for them.
think if it goes any less than 50, then it's going to be a spit in the face of everyone that bought a pre-order
Yeah,
pack last year. And they
100%.
told you can't buy them anymore, and then that was the
100%.
only way you were getting into Alpha 2.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Dave. I think like minimum 50 for just the key is gonna be probably the price point.
Now, do you think
People
they should
will
release?
still have a problem.
Yeah.
though.
That's true.
Mm.
You're going to hear all the people saying scam of creation, right? You know, they're asking
Yeah.
for more money, you know, but if
not
anybody's like
gonna lie.
followed,
Yeah.
When I'm talking to people in the WoW scene and in other games, they already are looking for problems because the game industry at the moment with MMOs is so scam worthy. They're like, oh, this is the one. Is it the one that's not a scam? All right. And the fact that they weren't selling access to the game was the major selling point. I could say to people like, no, you can't even go give the game money. I dare you. You can't. The fact they're bringing this out looks bad on them anyway.
Yeah.
yeah, I think, you know, I think that when people are paying into the game at $250, like yes, you got a lot of other things with it, and the alpha key technically, right, probably was only like $40, you know, worth of.
I can't speak for everyone,
you
but I
know,
didn't buy that pack because I
right.
wanted the fucking
I didn't buy
cosmetics.
for
I
the
wanted to get into the
cosmetics. You
alpha.
didn't buy, you know, for the prepaid subscription for the game that literally doesn't exist right now, right? You bought it because you wanted to get into Alpha 2, if we're being honest.
I got some
Yeah.
pretty sick looking cosmetics
Yeah.
though with my pack.
It's
I'm
true,
not doubting them, but they're not. But for me, I spent $375 on my pack, right? And
Right.
there is no shot in fucking hell that over fucking $300 of that was worth just the cosmetics I got.
Yeah.
No way in hell.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I mean, like
100%.
realistically, people are paying $250 because they feel like that's what it was worth to get into Alpha 2 and ensuring that they do. So, I mean, I'm probably on the more high end as far as what I think they should probably do an Alpha 2 key for. Like in my mind, I'm thinking like $100 for an Alpha 2 key would probably make people who already bought it happy. But on the other side of things, personally, I don't really care. I just want people to be in and playing Alpha 2 and get as many people in there and playing as possible. So, I mean, they could release it for free, and I personally probably wouldn't care. But I feel
I think genuinely free weekends are probably the way forward rather than this. If I was sitting in their shoes right now and they wanted to do server stress testing, I'd say let the Alpha 2 people go in, let them have a month. Okay, then we'll do a stress server test for this weekend. Anyone's allowed in. Free weekend. Not only is that a publicity thing they can use to get more people playing the game, but then they can stress the shit out of their servers, and they're not going to be told, I thought you already had enough money for the first year. Because that's what they said. So that is how I would have done it in their position.
so
And it's
something
already
akin
kind
to
of
like a
blurring the
Star
lines.
Citizen free fly weekend.
Yeah, like that, yeah. But not having the ability to buy in for fucking $20,000 or
$40,000.
something today. Yeah. To own your own
Insane.
10 castles in the clouds or something. Yeah.
The problem is,
Yeah, they
is
just dropped that they're selling access to one of the 5 castles in game. You can own one of them right off the bat.
that
gosh,
one is
goodness.
bidding. Yeah.
So the problem is with like choosing this amount, and this is the problem with that we were just discussing earlier with the Q3 thing and music, what you're talking about with Steven. They were very clear over and over again that these packs are gone, and it really seemed like Alpha 2 access. This is it. This is your last chance. They really sold it, and that's
why
a
I bought
negative.
it.
Yeah, that's what's gonna piss people off. That it's like, you told me this was the last one. I feel manipulated. I spent $250, and so I think I want more people in. So like 50, but like also 100 to 125, like would probably, like, people wouldn't get as mad. People are going to,
I'm
but
going to
like,
put on my
should have been
cynical
so
hat right here
specific.
and say that it's also actually been too long for me to call up the credit card company and charge back and just buy an Alpha 2 key.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Because for me, I just want to get into the Alpha 2. I don't actually give a shit about the cosmetics. If I had the option to kind of go refund my Alpha 2 key then, and you're going to give me back the requirement of the money, and then I'll buy one for whatever price you put it up for. If they gave that option to me, by all means, I would be happy.
They
Because
might.
I know that for a lot of people, that stuff means a lot. But for me and for a lot of other people I know, no, I just don't give a shit. If I've got some exclusive title over my head or a new fucking piece of armor, it makes no difference to me unless it gives me more damage.
I might be biased, but I really love giveaways. So I think if they had more keys and more giveaways available, I think that would help a lot for the general community. But I definitely see the point of being angry that they're re-releasing it, especially when they're like, by the way, we're stopping this. So it's kind of like a under promise, over deliver sort of concept where you have to stick to your promises and do that stuff.
And that's not even mentioning the fact that when I bought it, it said that I'll be able to join the game in Q3 of 2024. You know, even if I give them the freedom for that, and then they're saying, well, actually, you could have waited until then. You know, it reeks really badly. Like, I really hope it isn't going to end up being one of those games where they're full of promises and they never meet up to expectations. And I don't think it is, but this kind of thing really puts doubt in people's minds.
Yeah, 100% it does.
Yeah. But, they are releasing it. They said they were going to. So we'll see, I guess, what the price of that ends up being. Just a little shout out here, too, for our community, because we're kind of like running out on time. I know. I think, Kai, you had a raid to get to, too, you mentioned. So I think we'll kind of wrap up here a little bit. I think that's a great discussion. Obviously, we had some technical difficulties, so sorry about that. We'll fix that for next time because I won't be traveling with my entire streaming setup across the country. But just wanted to give a shout out to Heroes Gaming Group as well. Again, we have our Discord, discord.gg/Heroes Gaming. We also do Alpha 2 giveaways as we're talking about giveaways here. So hop in our Discord, go check out our community, talk with the folks leveled up, look at some of the giveaways that we're offering as well, and just get to know us a little bit because we just enjoy meeting new people, talking to new people, and talking everything AOC. So we'll be back next month with episode 2 with less technical difficulties. But for now, if you all want to say goodbye to the stream, we'll see you all next time.